mani padme hum 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 tamye do ye ja ye re sun do ye ma do ye je hum ba se je no bo do wa je ve xiao jie jie gui xiao la gui xiao zhe zhe mei wu zhe dou jie jing ru de ma de xie jie wu jie dao ma tam jie se ba ge jian chui jie jie nian min de gong dian jian gui xiao zhe wu mi jiu jie yin jie guo zhang de zhong song jie gun jian wu ni dang san qiu gong wu song dong de bei zhe wei la mei xiao la gui xiao Assemblando dam jin de ye ye na mo ya la ye ge dang lo ji ge zhong da dang mi ge nong ne do ba gong jie da ge jie zang ba tam ji ge de da ge ju de. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Today, Theravada. Ta chỉ tăng ngã số đi
Hi, sorry, my iPad isn't working.
You can show me here.
Yeah. Oh,
Thế nên đã thì ngã số chỉ tăng kun chỉ tiền kinh đi nào là thế nên đã có chỉ đã tham gia ngã số chỉ chịu yêu vào đâu lập chủ cái này yang tham gia chỉ có cá nhân đâu thì dùng cái yêu vào này yang đã thì chỉ thì có chỉ để đâu xem là để dùng nhà để có rằng yên đâu chỉ để thì thế là ngã số chỉ 다 고 갈색을 차상지 내가 drop 투야지 당 드네양 고 단다양 고 지주충도 땅치지 배 직강에도 참 매봐서 투야디 다 요말와 이미 이네요 다가 저 직원에 단다 농바 상지비게 지추냠래 지시야데 오늘 배 자침부 휴지리 자침부 간디지리 휴위나 근데 고지나 양 고냠래 제야요와 더 양야 도나야 지 다동양 고대 추디 편토대와 텐디지 연구요래 배나 변성도 휴위나 다탄다 초현시들이 COVID-19 갈색 건나자티키지 칠로란도야 매와 참참도야 매와 상도야 매와 텐디도 오지 다 차디요래 뭔가 초지들이 강해서 오지래 이내양 공가서 냠래 지비게 냠래 진행게 강사제 큰거라 선호당비나 테니 에피조레도 와 갈세나고 치로라야 로마고 승자제 인용과 강해지 인용과 텐디지지고 과갑나 로로디 테니 지 두수 강요와 달라더니
지금 추치야 요와 지금 아장야 요와 다지 들어가나 이거 메소도 오지 더야 요와 근데 장내 섬지면 샤워를 도와 텐두 기타 지 맞아 추념내 지 라드 진짜 휴지 그때다 표현한다고 오지 지지비 사자 양은 사자 신바지는 도고야로 오지다 양만다 이제 당에서 칼라지 소유나 되네 칼라테 입자자가 도고래 되네 배지 되네 나라 레고래 되네 텔레페 초고래 또고래 되네 소고와 어 되네 자면 고요 말에 뭐네 추념내 지비나 거지 단다디스지 사견 당보 텔라 세네리타 미니 당보 텔라 지기스 강연도 텔 요위나야 거지 사견이 파세나리 테 카르마 지마 텔라 테네 고 홀로지 디토비아지 용투고요레 에스티인데다티 나 정문에 장에 배자 첨보레 에스티인데다 드리지 고ኛ요 말와 그래서 이나 고가주다 아지 강사 메링모레 기 냠냠치양도 지게 지도부여로 와대는 지금 메신바지가 랭고야로 지금 요고야로 가요 말이스.
공자의 칼라조 이야기 골라서 시라.
그 맞고 공자야 데 칼라소야 데 레라 그레스.
오케이.
그냥 칼라로 지소고나 레라 오면도 와.
그래야.
대치로 디미차지가. 바꿔서.
So in general, as we, in life or in the world, sometimes things go well. Sometimes we are happy or things are pleasant. But of course, sometimes there are difficulties and hardships. So that is the nature of that. That's just naturally how it is. There is a flux of pleasant and unpleasant, or happiness and suffering, and this is just natural. Of course, we can't expect to have exclusively happiness and to be able to completely get rid of all of our difficulties or problems, or to completely be free of hardship. However, as a Dharma practitioner, this is really we have a really precious opportunity to always have kind of a positive outlook with regard to bringing everything onto the path. And so we practice both when things are going well, and also when things are difficult or things are not going so well, we still are relying on the Dharma. We still rely first and foremost on our practice. So for example, right now with this pandemic of COVID-19, from on the one hand, we can see this as really, a great time of hardship and difficulty. And even aside from all of the intense suffering, sickness and death, also individually, we may find it difficult to not be able to go outside to the same, or to travel or to socialize or gather in groups, to go to restaurants and so forth. But on the other hand, actually, as a Dharma practitioner, we can see this as a real opportunity because we're forced to simplify our life. So really, actually, the amount of sort of distraction and activity naturally diminishes. And for a practitioner, this is a real opportunity because now we have the conditions that enable us to really just to stay inside. And so there's more with this sort of simplification that has occurred, then there's more time to dedicate to Dharma practice. There's more time to meditate. There's more time to accumulate mantra recitations. So actually, it's really quite kind of beneficial in a way for a Dharma practitioner. We can really bring these adverse conditions or circumstances onto the path. Actually, you know, practice, on the one hand, we might kind of have this attitude of seeing practice as something that's kind of difficult to achieve. But when you really think about it, actually, it's really quite simple. It's really quite easy. It's actually a lot easier even than preparing a meal, than preparing food. If you want to prepare a meal, you have to go to the store, you have to buy all your groceries, and then you come home and you have to, you know, cut all of the vegetables and prepare the food, and it's a pretty labor-intensive process. But so on the one hand, we might first, you know, think, you know, that the dangpo, second dangpo, the kala zoya kale kapo yore nyamnechiya.
Nyamnechiya. Kada nyamnechiya le labo is labo yorwa. Karsina sagya tangbo de kanya yuwi na sagya nipala kanya chitu.
So sometimes there's like some resistance, you know, to practice. Like, so the first moment we kind of think like, oh, you know, practice is like, there's a feeling of it being sort of a hardship or difficulty, like in the first second or the first moment. Then you
kita ngatu kanya yuwi nas, kita practice ya kanya yuwa labo marwa.
Oh, chana pata pindala.
Tende mare kasada kita ngatu kita kanya yuwi na, tambo kanya yuwi kala pena sagya tambo kanya yuwi na, sagya nim kala kanya mewa chatu. Stati lela ore spena kala soya lela is la jumten se wa.
So actually, he wasn't talking specifically with regard to practice, but when we have something that we consider to be kind of difficult, like say in this example of like, you know, feeling resistant to preparing a meal or sort of seeing it as a difficulty or kind of a chore, in the first second, there's some resistance or there's a feeling like this might be difficult. But then in the second moment, in the second second, then we can sort of relax and see, you know, and feel like, oh, this is something that can be done. We can actually sort of embrace whatever the activity is and sort of overcome that initial hesitation. And this is really like really important, and especially, you know, for somebody who is a practitioner, then there's really this like more of an ability to kind of approach things in this way.
So there always opportunity is.
So we always see the opportunity.
Then there wa ngara ki nyam nyong do chin ta cham chang ga so ji khar se energy do ni chi ko le ka le ya le pe ni do le ka le thu bu yo is yin yang sam de ko ji physical ko de la back pain do da ni this pe supo yang ka ba na ya yang na yap na ya yang na la na ya ni le ka le ya this ka le ka bu yo bi na ni ya opportunity second opportunity khari yo la na Meeting money chunyam nechi ya, bom jaya, na tanga ha, ko chelejiang opportunity ji yumudoa, tiene tiene ji, yamne chingya la, kawaii yimbi na te, ji ko flexible do ji opportunity ji yoris.
So Japan says, you know, from his own experience, you know, particularly when he's been doing a lot of work, like a lot of sort of physical labor maybe, then sometimes there are physical difficulties that come up, like maybe he has back pain, or his, you know, knees or legs are hurting, or his hands are hurting, but then he sort of realizes that, oh, now is the time to apply the practice. So this is in this is very situation, we can bring this onto the path by applying the Dharma, by sort of relaxing into a state of natural awareness or reciting mantra. And so then there's this ability for the practitioner, to be very flexible with whatever comes your way, really seeing everything as an opportunity. So now we are on verse number 19 of the 37 Bodhisattva practices. So it says, though one may be famous and revered by many people, or gain wealth like that of Vaishravana, having realized that worldly fortune is without essence, to be unconceited is the Bodhisattva's practice. Or an alternative translation reads, though I may be renowned with many bowing to me, and may gain wealth like Vaishravanas, having seen that the glory and riches of existence are meaningless, not to be puffed up with pride is the Bodhisattva's practice.
The top that Kariorsana, the magic, what a ma top some ma chupuin, some bihula, the magic handlety, small, bam, what that the chia is, and a namtoses here, that namtoses here, the that Jatan, some chingu, another Jatan, Yachenzi, the Tajik, North Canonic, short chua. That Yachenzi, Laguare, and something got to tell for gatekeeper, what that he knew. Jetan that hard, Jetan hard, Latini, and that Tambo is at the Tambo, Tambo Jachenri, that's what somebody
That Tambo
today.
Marine
Tambo Jachenri, what in it, Sarwa. Wakanda can in a minute, Gondo Tampizua Meva, or that younger is for that Nagi, Munga hit in it, huge Zora maybe now in Montobroa, or that Liji Toby in a young, telling Najatan. Yes.
So sometimes, just as we mentioned just now, at times things go well for us in the world. In a worldly sense, we're doing pretty well. Things are going our way, but of course, sometimes it's not that way. Sometimes things don't go so well, or things are difficult. But in times when things go well, so for perhaps one has an abundance of wealth, one is doing well financially, and one maybe has a high position, and of course, all of these, there's success, there's praise, there's all of the things that we hope for in a worldly sense, with all of the sort of positive aspects of the worldly concerns. So it isn't that this is a problem or that this isn't okay. If things go that way, if there's success and wealth and renown and so forth, then that is fine. But we also shouldn't feel like we need that. So it isn't, it shouldn't, doesn't have to be bound up in a feeling of great expectation or need. And of course, naturally, there comes kind of the expecting or the hope, the wish that things will go our way, that we'll get what we want, and that all of these sort of positive worldly conditions might come together. But when they do come together, it's important not to think, oh, this is my doing. I have achieved this. I am so rich and I am so powerful and I am so successful, or I'm, have this or that kind of ability or quality. And then based on kind of that sense of arrogance, or there develops a superiority, an attitude of superiority. And then that we kind of look down on others, or we sort of push others down based on this feeling of superiority. And so this is what the practice is saying, is that not to become prideful or puffed up, but to, even if we gain wealth like that of Vaishravanas. And so Vaishravana is referring to, one of the powerful, like the first level of the God realms, which is associated with great abundance or wealth. So the jewel of Vaishravana is said to be, sort of the most precious of gems. And so without becoming prideful and thinking that this is one's own sort of achievement, and to feel that allow it to give oneself a sense of superiority, instead to remain humble and not get caught up in a sense of pride, is the Bodhisattva's practice.
진짜 기타가 저디 직 소남 송스는 것을 주반조 이나리 다 아주 주반조 이나리 제명년다 이나 태양한테 그것도 주 매화다 제매화는 중국어 말이 맞지 제완디 이나리 제와 ngoma inari tini jela ngo sonam zabe ke jehu jela wa sonam zabe ke jehu jela so juya bo banjo ya bo yungu yore tini je indu ta teyang agi gong chuba na gi nga ja chiya ka chabla wa ta bi ji ji si yang ro ji ji le ta ji ya bo chung ja ta tanda tani ne kabla yang an de ji do sta nga de opportunity one ju banjo sia di ko karsena tanalando speak dewa sia di takwadema yomarwa takwadema yomare tendu raya takwadema yomare yukaraya takwadema yomare jitan sibi dewa tatsi seba zong za zeng seba yorwa koji nima mahyangola da be chu yore masoji ti robin kamba tamalomba chanro wa yina ya nima je kya chabe hibe yelo wa
Kande kare kampadumpa
진짜 자나도나 하고도 실바요 가자 한국 상관없는 차그러와 진이 추요래 쇼기로 오진도나 참여하고 이내야 특히 털만에는 말와 니마지 샤르터는 그 예로 미쳐와 때나 인가서 스비에게 되어디 진이 예로 그래 진이 다 거갑 갈 수 있는 거잖아 단단히 유외네 칼라 들라지 나지 기차라고 야고 중샤 다 내지 손남사 비키디블리 진이 다티 소남강 소남자 다 단단하는데 니지 지야도 지야 요가디 소남제를 충분히 마음베기 소남 준투지 근데 맞지 다 등장 참하고 앞에 높죠 봐인다 잠블링 코랑 기지 배샤데 배고라 코리아 니 배지아가사야 어떤 이게 소남데니 지 소남 준차스 소남데 따파 용야 기지들 근데 진바당야 완전 요가 현에 팬토야 야 권장 좀 쳐봐 프야 어다 텐디지 집이나 번져요 어디 뭐네 장에 지 소남강 소남 싸기고 개류 니마 소남 싸니 번져도 충분해라 단대기 그 뒤주니 뭐발 야야 야 상신도 와 어다 틀리인도 텐디지 고갑티 지금 상황이 되네 이제 번져 요비네 까라 근데 고갑으면 빼마시 개진 거래 예스 teniti kokab de permanent do yo mare estin telekawa kong te teniji
So instead, when we have success, when we have financial success or wealth and good fortune ripening for us, then it is one can think, oh, this is merit, this is the ripening, surely I've created, this is the ripening of causes that have been created in the past, and so therefore this is a temporary karmic ripening of abundance, of good fortune and abundance. So in that way, it isn't that there's anything wrong with the success and renown and wealth and so forth. This is the natural result of having accumulated the causes and conditions in former lives. So it is the ripening of merit, and so therefore, but it is temporary, so it isn't permanent. So it's important to remember, to recognize during the ripening of positive karma like this, that this is temporary positive or favorable karmic ripening, and that it is in no way should we expect it to be lasting or ongoing. That in fact it's like, the nature of the happiness of existence is very experience in existence is very fleeting. It is not stable, it is not permanent. I am not stable or lasting or permanent, and neither are these favorable karmic ripenings of wealth and good fortune. And so we have actually an opportunity here, recognizing this as a ripening of merit. Then there is the opportunity to turn it into the causes for accumulating, for the furthering the accumulation of merit. So it's important to use those opportunities in such a way that instead of them becoming the cause for the merit to just exhaust itself, that on top of that ripening of favorable merit, karma or merit, it then becomes a further cause to increase our merit. And so it is in no way lasting. It's like, for instance, when we walk in the grass in the early morning, and it's just like, dewdrops on the tips of blades of grass that vanish in a single moment, as it also says. When we walk in the grass in the early morning, our shoes and socks may become wet. But that grass doesn't stay wet, and also our shoes will dry. It isn't permanent. It's a condition that arises and then it vanishes, it passes. And this is how all of the experiences of cyclic existence are. So all of the happiness that can be found in cyclic existence is like that. It's fleeting and it's temporary. They are simply temporary karmic ripenings. So in that case, if we recognize the impermanence, the nature of impermanence, while experiencing these favorable karmic ripenings, then in the place of pride, or instead of pride, or becoming puffed up, we acknowledge this is simply karmic ripening. This is simply the ripening of merit. And then in the midst of that karmic ripening, then one has the wherewithal to be able to create further positive karmic causes or merit based on that temporary ripening of merit. And so for instance, if we have the merit of wealth is ripening for us, then if we use that as a condition for accumulating the positive karma of generosity, so with our wealth or with that favorable karmic ripening, we use that wealth to practice generosity, to make offerings to the three jewels. Then based on that positive ripening or merit, it becomes the cause for further merit. And so then the merit becomes a continuity, it becomes continuous. And so in that way, there are many opportunities for Dharma practice, both when experiencing unfavorable ripenings and also when experiencing favorable ripenings. So it's important to recognize the opportunities and to take them, recognizing that nothing is permanent.
ngazu chuang mo ta chang so pe che musun de ga ju ni mo che ji chuang mo chi je pe che nyung yu ji la ya mo ko yo wa ji tang chung ga ta de ga ju yin na la ta chuang mo chi ge da chen bo wa chang so ko nyung yu ji le is je nyung yu ji le is a te nu ji tang ta chuang mo chi ge mixe kari yo de hui na that one which is Changjo Lane, like some junior, some junior, mix a career lavina. Pekin dawa ni some Tindela, the penalty, Tination in Ixari. Benacoran get on Peshara, Devati, Chipesharawate, Kaduina that gave it short tongue. Peshara de watela, Chikumbat has on the Jia, Chitata Meva so yore. Tindu Taco de Tuzongonichi and the Pemsi Aboredo, Carsana Yang Chitan Gosa Jigdan, Matan Gosa Ni Orwa, Tindu Penatuan Buchinowina, Matan Gosa, Anasha Boji Tangamari, Patavina, Tuan Bochipe, Sena Sawana Bochi, Senarwa, Sena. 제가 나 얘기 지금 이렇게 미니 오픈도 지나 상당 키쇼라고 배샤 키쇼라고 그래. 근데 남상 배샤 집티는 배샤데 이 기타다 뭐지 코네 로쿠노 침보가 하는데 지 자갈을 내버리 그 자갈을 배샤 기타 옐로 요래 옐로도 뭐 추도로 이슈로 요와. 그 자가 배샤 요와. 오케이. 자가 배샤들 되게 되어와 배. 100 bells. 20 bells, 50 bells, no yorwa. Tineti that Hidake, I'm going to tie up this cover of Besha, Pelico, Yina Besha, this Java Beshati, 100 in this Chimbo Yore. Nekas in the Besha, Jay in a Chunjung Yorwa. Then Lamson magic done Lamson Tiger for coaching that this Chimbo Yuna, Lamson Mataga. Chimbo yellow the water, and if you look to the Daji Bear, for a semi for Cote. Same. That Tindiri, Yinaya, that the Besha to go. That Gombala Tangawa. Oh, Conan, or Tin the Tintia, did not upon your say at the Yubina coaching. Tansatel, Manjo, what you cook yesterday. Tangas the Besha, never so good, started up Besha, yours, never soyati. Go to give somebody, Carson. 그 배샤던 로 가왔다고 이거는 개침보지거든. 땅고 살와. 어떻게 좀 지그레스.
So tampo nyagre tene tunda shimbache la chita book. So for instance, and this is how he believes that the great master Drubang Rinpoche practiced like by building more merit upon the ripening of merit, because so of course many of you know of Drubang Rinpoche, who was a great yogi in our Drikung Kagyu tradition. In fact, probably a number of you have actually met him. Have had the good fortune to actually meet him in person. So it is interesting because he had this way of when he would receive, if one didn't really see or understand how he was practicing, then one might even give rise to some judgment, because he would sometimes, people would come and they would make offerings, and he would really sort of have a lot of interest in acquiring the offerings, you know. So he would, you know, he would get the offering and then he would kind of like, you know, hang on to it, or like, you know, sort of have this this attitude of wanting to acquire the offerings. And so, and he wasn't, you know, he was completely sort of unabashed about this. And so to an outsider, it might look as though he was kind of greedy. And so even, for instance, when somebody would come to make an offering, and or someone would come to see him and he would say, oh, bring me the offering, bring me the envelope. And then there were like different you know, amounts of, you know, for instance, there's like, you know, the Indian rupee bills, there were like the like $100 rupee bills, or 20 rupee bills, or 50 rupee bills. And so if it were, if it was, you know, like a higher number, you know, like $100 bill, or a number of $100 bills, then he would immediately like take those, you know,
so this India,
yeah, go ahead.
So here this money size, you know, $100 bill or this $1 bill is the same size. But the Rinpoche is interesting. He don't know exactly how, maybe because he's just new to in India, you know, you cannot read the Hindi, and also these numbers different. He don't know number, but he know. So India is the 100 rupees bigger, and then 50, and then 20, and then 5, 10, 5. So one is very small. So he not interested in one. He just look, and the big ones we immediately just put in his bag. You know, he knows. You know, so just. So it looks like, you know, so also like every time like people like so see him, so yeah, people said, oh, okay, please give me the blessings, these things. But then the Rinpoche looks like just only like whatever the envelope, just look your envelope, okay, how much, you know. So this kind of he's we directly his attitude, you know, he's really wanting, but he's never keep in the money, like immediately, or like or a couple of weeks, and then go to monastery, give the monastery, so completely. And also,
so he wasn't, it wasn't as though he was hanging on to these for himself or because he was greedy, but it was actually that he was so you offering them, you know, to the monastery. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, so whatever he had, he actually didn't spend any of these offerings on himself. He was very simple and had very few needs, but he would take whatever it was that was given, and then build upon that merit by making using it in a virtuous way by making offerings to the monastery and so forth, which also benefited the people who made the offerings.
And also his like position. So that time it's like Tibetan Asia, they are giving many things, so like blanket or whatever this kind of different stuff. So it's same thing here. So he especially is like 3 months or I don't know. So then, they call the head of the monastery. They say, okay, please come. Okay, take everything. So just completely make empty. So sort of like then they sort of yard sale, so just all the bring what he stuff, and then they will put like courtyard in monastery. So then people just buy. So like sort of yard sale, like not really expensive, but sell the monk. And this money giving to the monastery. So also that time, I think he said, okay, right now I free or whatever you want, I can. So this, because his money, that's my possession, my money, I can give them. He said, I don't want to left, I die. So that
I don't want it to be left when I die.
Yeah. Like possessions or money. So that times he cannot control, right? It's money. So then somebody's control. So that he said, I take opportunity, able to my control.
So yeah, he wanted to have control of where it went or how it was spent to make sure that it was virtuous.
Yeah, take care of things, So he said he don't want to wait. So these many practitioners, and same thing, we have another one of my area, Kata Rinpoche. So Likaba relative, he's amazing practitioner. I can tell you before, he one day he said, oh, I want to clean up his room. So then everybody sort of clean up everything. And then, so after that he meditated, just he said, he did a couple postrations. And then somebody said, okay, you said you're a little bit sick today, so you don't do prostration. He said, yeah, today is very opportunity. No, sorry. Today is special day. I have to prostration to Buddha Dharma. So then, just he said, he meditated, or he passed.
So he sat down and then he died. He passed away.
So actually, before so his name's Kada. So I think before I talked to him, I don't know, maybe 3 months, maybe. I'm not sure exactly. So he told me, I don't have anything. I prepare everything. I give, even though I have this, he has one like jacket or whatever, this big chuba. So these I already give to this person. So he make them carve the money. So then he has the silver prayer wheel.
He had a silver prayer wheel.
Right. So this is I sold. So I died, he can take, So then he told me, I don't have anything in my possession. Just done, he's clean, finished. Mm-hmm. So interesting, so we cannot do that, but also, so this kind of, so if we will, so we opportunity to, use.
If we have wealth, there's an opportunity to use it in a way that is meaningful.
Right. And also like holiness always said, so we don't waste the money. He said, don't not meaningful. We don't spend any penny, you're really careful.
Don't spend even a penny if it's not meaningful.
Right. So if meaningful, okay, just give whole thing, You give, so same way. So anyway, so this is today Theravada. in the Jatanga to Lonchu Sayati, Yungres, in the Jatanga Lonchu Yunya, so Yung Magosaya, Yo Mare, Lonchu Yung Matella Dubori somewhere, Yo Mare, in a young, telling Hajar Machiwa, Tegana Yike, Lonchu Tian, Tani Contua Young. Temba me Yo Mare, Tanda Lonchu cock up the same kitten, Jenga Lonchu to Pichuchian, Mato Bege, and Yamajela, young, what he cock up the land. Yes.
So that's this is really the gist of this verse, which is that sometimes there will be good fortune and abundance. When there is good fortune and abundance, we don't need to think, if for instance there's an abundance of wealth, we don't have to think that there's something wrong with that, that we shouldn't, that we shouldn't have that. That it's bad, but it's also important not to become puffed up if we have a lot of wealth or abundance, and instead to recognize, to not be prideful, but to recognize that it's not lasting, it's not stable, and to take the opportunity, to actually use the opportunity while it's available. To use the wealth in a positive way.
Tigana Tatan, Jamon Song, Jamon Sonia to pick kitchen boarding. Sometimes as a position to Zola, necessary over, not so in Jimmy daily, you chill your work, to go your the kitchen board. In sometimes as a position to pay you junior marwa.
Position?
Jalagua.
Oh, possession. I thought you were saying position.
Sorry.
Yeah.
The Jala, the Jalanga, he not to go go, Jimmy, pay you your laugh, your not to be daily use pay, go yours. You know, something as a pay, tell Chapanda with your chin, chia, tomato bake, Jalati, pen, Kayamato, you that he
so actually it's really so important, these instructions from Chamgon Rinpoche, from His Holiness, because really it's difficult to to spend our wealth wisely, because sometimes there are things that we need. There are things that can, that we have to purchase that are, or we can purchase and they actually are of great benefit, especially when they're items or they're possessions that we use on a daily basis, that end up becoming useful to us in a very practical way, or on a daily basis. But then sometimes, there are items or possessions that we actually, if we really think about it, we don't really need them. We've just sort of gotten swept up in attachment. And so thinking that we need this thing or this possession, then we just, consume. But actually, it's important to curtail that tendency when we can.
American 야보도 yard sales 해야 되지. 원이 그 참다 담아로 차로 와. 지 콘페샤디스 라기오레. 이내 양 초현시지도 거지 답에 잘하면 뭐냐 디비나. 원이 동해래도 와. 야삼메라. 되네. 티리 많이 받더니 그때 원이 지 검신도 배 야보인 사례스.
So actually he says he thinks that in America we have this really nice custom of having yard sales, which is really actually a great thing to do, because if you think about it, like we easily can acquire so much stuff, and like really, if we just hang on to that stuff endlessly, it piles up and it becomes cumbersome, and really there's no benefit. But if we have a yard sale and we sell those things, then it's a great opportunity to sort of clear, to clear space, or to clear things out, and also to make a little money in the process, and to be able to sell things, to people at a cheaper price.
So attitude is a little bit different, So this giving is kind of sort of like if you can make $5, you sell, like almost you're giving. But so attitude is why I sell, I sold this one. So easy to let go attachment. Otherwise, so this kind of interesting. So I think Yard says. Next one. Terwa. Ranke Hedar Dawo Matuna. Chiro Dawo to him parent jury. Teja Chantan in Makonke, Ranju do what you're
So then the next verse is verse number 20, which says, if outer foes are destroyed while not subduing the enemy of one's own hatred, enemies will only increase. Therefore, subduing one's own mind with the army of love and compassion is the Bodhisattva's practice. Or the alternative translation reads, when the enemy of one's own aggression has not been tamed, subduing outer enemies will only make them multiply. Therefore, to conquer one's own continuum with the army of love and compassion is the Bodhisattva's practice.
History, Jacob Jig Yamato Chimbo Chavare, Kene Jacob Quanato, Kayameva Chavare, that Tendino Jacob in a Tenile, Yamato to Parsi, but a young source, but it's that Tende, the Janji Yungu, Tigana Yiki, then the individual that was some Tambina, money, the own hand of grace, yeah, the Dembari. Then, what's a Chomba Chimzendo, which is a Motambina. Yamena Nasa Sando, which is a Motambina. Chig Magic, not a Magawando Chamina. Tigara Peta, Magic Pandora. Magic Tag Mari, that Metalatine, Togo Ujire. Oh, Tigagamari, the name Mutelape, Nasa San Choachime Ujire, Tegagamari. What that Tindiji coaching Mara Mata Beke, G. Tundoati, your Mari. Is.
So this is really true, and it's not difficult to recognize the truth of this statement. So, for instance, even when you think about it in a global sense, when it comes to warfare between countries. So if one is trying to subdue outer enemies, so, of course, you're all familiar with history, so that there have been, periods throughout history where countries have gone to war, and one country has become really powerful and has been able to take over, and has reigned sort of superior with great power and might for a time, and then there's and then they're defeated by their enemies, and then they lose their power and another country becomes powerful, and so this is how it works. So one may conquer for a time, or there may be a period where one remains the conqueror, but before long, one is conquered by somebody else. And so this is how it is in a global sense, or politically, when it comes to countries. And also it's how it is for individuals. And really, as it says, as long as we don't subdue the enemy of the hatred in our own mind, and we always regard, we're always trying to conquer or subdue outer enemies, then there's never any end. And in fact, what happens is that our enemies only increase. Because, for instance, if there is a dispute that arises, in either in an extended family, or with someone in your extended family, or someone in your community, then it's never limited. The dispute never becomes limited to that one individual, but it ends up, involving more and more people, because that person has their own friends and companions, their own family members, or their other family members that then they sort of, kind of end up sort of seeking support from, and then before you know it, there is a kind of this dispute that involves many people, even if it just started out with only one person. And so in that way, if we try to subdue outer enemies, then enemies only increase. Rang Hedang the Mebaso Gosaris, Dat Mebaso Gosaris, some of Bambina, the Netangi Contuana, or Das Yadi, Mewachanga Yomaris, and also Tuge Mari, so Tuya Yomari. That tele tini, Jek Rang Ketini, Hedang Siadatini, Tuyate, Tavichi Grace. So if we think about this, of course, it is not easy to subdue the enemy of one's own hatred. It is really quite challenging to work with anger. It isn't easy to overcome or abandon anger, but as long as we fail to do so, then anger only leads to more negativity and greater suffering. And so, and the more that we allow anger to run its course without making an effort to pacify or subdue that anger, then it only causes the causes and conditions for anger to increase. And so therefore, it becomes progressively more and more difficult to actually overcome or to pacify that anger. And so if we really contemplate well, and especially when we consider, the outcome of either trying to subdue outer enemies or trying to subdue the enemy of one's own hatred, when we know it is really impossible to subdue outer enemies, and we know the outcome of that. And so the only, the only option really is to instead direct our efforts toward trying to pacify the hatred or the anger in our own mind stream to the best of our ability. And as we do so, then it actually becomes easier over time. Ordinarily Karzam Grelana or Magic Rana Dugotan Gray, saying about Love Greta Katam Mondorova, Jig Rank Dark Gana Dugotan Bicala, Taniepe, the Pagila Ninja Doji Gomdina, Tinning Nala Tiniti, loser Doji, Chandras at the Zambiki, Namtoji Jungior. Tindu that tea damnati, Tinipet, Joanjitan Sumjum, Sapchuna. Subju, some subju now. I'm not a get I'm not Carzo Resena. Then Paos on it, Paul Lato, so Chora Meshimba Jaki, Chona, Dada Vijaki, Dubotani,
beta se la buio ne kandi je ke da ki yang chon no ba je ta na ta ke ta da la da wa ji da se ya ji do te da da ma wo da jo ren bu ji tin tang bo tin song ya sa ro da zu song go ya da tin sa tin du wo tin di je ke no ba tang yin ti ke la tin ji pi le kong zhong ma za wa ro te le ning je gong to ba tin di je yin da ba wo se ya de te re yes 다 남중 가서 봐오세야지 요즘 밤낮이 다지 그래서 보고 말이지 그 가서 그 웨이트리 차요 말이야 자토요 말이야 간 자토요 말이야 너서 다로 매지시 차비나 거기 남인용 그러와 소렌지 그러와 마음바 등이 냐라 다 마음바 책 말 단단히 기뻐라 단단한 가서 매지시비나 종아로 그러와 근데 배샤티 그러와 그 등에를 맡아বে 더 돈 가요 난원에 개고 이제 통년에 가서 버리 세미나 오세야 들지 공로 말아 해랑 너바 땅 베가라 더 그나바 가땅 거 성어 땅비는 뭐 들었지 둥해지 때 근데 다고 둥해지 다티게 고 뭐들 둥해지 때야 타키지 거래 둥해데 때등 띠용등 하기 공로 다티게 되는 메탈 파 no ba tang we ka la khon ra sa bin da ko da ti thang dang ro da ti pe cha parang tho ba ro ka sa me du nge ti cha la yin na ya pha jo da ti du bo kha si chi bi na me tel khon ro ma za bi na ko da ti ki no ba tang go sam go de du nge ti go sam gu yo de yin na ya ko du nge khang ti tho lo ro tin de yin de tin ba ka na sa na chi winner center de tin Poblador seate, seate is. Tindiza mutambina, tinga tuji heda panya tis lela yorwa. Timato be hitanga heda langime, heda chigme zambi, lela yomare, heda seate.
So ordinarily, we, with all of these verses that have come before, giving examples of how, we may be confronted by outer enemies who wish to harm us, those who say all sorts of negative and hurtful things to us, those who really may try to harm us in a variety of ways. But when we respond to that harm with compassion, practicing patience and generating compassion, we may actually, at first we might think, oh, if I don't retaliate, or if I instead have compassion toward this enemy or toward this harm doer, then I become the loser, then the enemy wins. So sometimes there's that concept that will arise, but actually it's really the opposite. And this is what is also taught by Lord Jigten Sumgun in the secret teachings of the Zapchu, where he talks about, or he gives the instructions about, the qualities of a true hero. And so really, like, we tend to, or in the world, there's the name or the term hero, given to somebody who's, like a warrior, a brave warrior who defeats the enemy, or wins the battle. But actually, this is not really the true meaning of a warrior. So the true meaning of a warrior is the one who is able to defeat the enemy of one's own hatred. So with, for instance, the opening verses of the Dagdangma, or the prayers that we always recite that begin with all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and so forth. So when confronted by that kind of challenge, that the harm of outer enemies, or the obstacle of outer enemies who really want to cause harm, when one is able to not give rise to a mental state of, great reactivity or anger or hatred, but instead, if one is able to really have compassion for one's enemies, then that person really is a true hero. Actually, a warrior or somebody who is able to destroy all of the one's outer enemies is not really actually a true hero. And in fact, even though they may, by the world, they may seen as may be seen as someone who is able to reign victorious over their enemies, actually in the end there is greater suffering that comes to them. And even for instance, if there is a dispute and somebody kills one's hated enemy, then the result of that is a pretty immediate suffering. One may go to prison, one may, have to pay a lot of money, and so forth. And so really by giving rise to anger, and not only that, but one will solicit more, there will be more enemies that come as a result. And so actually, if one doesn't retaliate or give rise to anger, if one doesn't respond to anger and hatred with anger and hatred, then what is the harm in that? What is the harm in not becoming angry? There really is no harm, because and there's really actually only benefit, because for instance, if one's enemy wants to cause one suffering, they want to actually, disturb one's mind and make one suffer. If you do not become angry, then you're actually not satisfying the desire of the enemy, which is to cause you to suffer. If there is no suffering there in response, then your enemy has not been successful. And so no matter how much harm or hostility may come toward one from outer enemies, to really be convinced that it is in one's own best interest to not become angry in return, and to practice patience, to generate genuine compassion toward one's harm doers, then one becomes the real winner. That really actually is the definition of true heroism. So one who is able to resist, the tendency to respond with anger, one who is able to really pacify the anger of one's own mind, is really the definition of a true hero.
제가 나이다 가서 되게 왔대. 존중하는 종교로와. 제가 칠로게 더우데 투야요 말이스 투투 말이스. 배나 저랑 지 배나 산다고지. 점랭 참아 꼬와나고지 요거나 요토야요 말와. 나한테 혼바자고도 나도서 참말라더니 지 꼬와나고지. 레탄다고지 땡고나 야요 말 요토고 말이스. 배터나 이 칠로 더우 투야데. Yes. Tele lela shot carisena, choran peda, Hamti zambi oyoana, rank till soyota, soul, so tenino, your shabina, which one cavandona yorwa. Can you sat some oil your naye, and leaving the rest lela yor. Yes, that the cadla worsena, chirok the wood to mare, tele, ranke, and hedan ma two wina, cavandona, dase at your. Yes.
So if we, no matter how much one may try to subdue outer enemies, or to to pacify sort of the, you know, adversity coming from the outside, there is no way to be successful at this. It is, as Shantideva says, it's like trying to cover the entire earth, the surface of the entire earth with leather. This is impossible. Much easier is to simply put on a shoe, to put, you know, a leather sole, you know, underneath your own foot. And so in this same way, then if we, you know, if you, just as if you wear shoes, then wherever you go, then there's, you know, the, you know, one is, the earth is sort of smooth, or one is cushioned, you know, the one soles, the soles of your feet are protected. In the same way, if, you know, we are not capable of subduing all outer enemies or adverse circumstances, but if we work on pacifying or subduing our own mind, the anger and hatred in our own mind, then wherever we go, we won't encounter enemies. Then actually by subduing the hatred in our own mind, then automatically the obstacle of outer enemies is overcome.
Tineda tanda that day something to achieve not to tell Show tamchi tendere tendu ketanga to da saya ji yorwa. Da saya di su so bari. Do. Then da saya tambo ni korachi original da ro ji yubina da. Ko ta zamo tan ya ro. Ina ko da saya su so bari. Individual nga so so do. Da so nga so yo mane. Ina nga so ko la da so yo. Tati meva su so gresena, o da kono meva sa yo marwa, maso da so wa. Ta su so gresena, ngarank da so gre, and ngarank meva so gre. But tati, money turning at that flexible, reasonable, some of them each other.
So actually, we can also think, you know, who created or who designated some outer person or group of people as an enemy. So if there's the presence of enemies, originally who designated that one as an enemy? If we really think about it, we realize that we are the ones who have created the perception. We have chosen to see this outer person or group of people as enemies. And so if externally that designation doesn't exist from its own side, then we can't cause it to not exist because it didn't exist initially from its own side. But we actually created it. We created the designation through our own perception, through our own concepts. So if we are responsible for designating the person or people as an enemy, then we essentially have created our enemies. And so if we have created them, then we are fully capable of making them not exist. So if we created them, we can also cause them to not be enemies, and in that way we can be, because with flexibility of mind, or it's actually quite reasonable to understand that it's really within our own power to choose to not hold on to the concept or perception of outer enemies as such.
Okay. So we can stop here, and some questions there, or
so there's no questions on the Facebook chat or on the Zoom chat.
Oh, okay.
have a question.
Okay.
Hi, thank you, Dupan. So lately, when I've felt really like grateful for certain situations, you know, when you look at the world and, you know, when you kind of consider the difference in some people's situations and your own situation, you know, there can arise a lot of gratefulness. And at the same time, that seems as a very, you know, a positive thing to experience. It's also coupled with the experience of impermanence, like you were talking about today. And that, you know, knowing that, you know, should a certain, you know, factor change, you know, that's gone, right? The situation really changes, right? A certain condition changes. And so even though, you know, the experience of that gratitude seems a little deeper now and more, you know, just deeper, at the same time, it seems because of the awareness of the impermanence of it, that there's a little bit of a feeling of a little fear and a little bit of just clinging a little bit, you know? So from a positive of more gratitude, deeper gratitude, more understanding of the impermanence, it's coupled together a little bit with a little bit more fear, you know, because of knowing the impermanence, and a little more clinging. So I don't know if you can address that in some way that could be helpful to.
Rita Chatan Motera, the Garitu Tandara Yova, PMC Yabores, Chigo Ares, Tintanga, so Chimbala Samogana Yomari, as a moment to moment, Tandara, or Chip Tandakan opportunity, Kariova, Tandajo Kariova, Tandanyam Kariyo water, Tiniji Keko, Hakowatam, Tilching Najimi with Tony, Carsenata, Yabore, Sambatana, Kokabiyabo, Chuchia, Yoa. Karina Tako, the gratitude more than someone's on there was in the Kanat in the Tawana. Moment in the Belchina, the Mount Balas Dungar Chagris.
So first of all, it's really wonderful actually that you are touching into a sense of gratitude, that you are actually experiencing, you know, having the mind of gratitude arise. This is really important and very precious. So the important thing is to have that gratitude and also not to think about the future. So without projecting into what could happen in the future, just to really take it moment to moment, to recognize the opportunities as they arise on a momentary basis. Like in this very moment, you know, right at this moment, you know, really on a moment-to-moment basis, when there is a sense of gratitude, when we take the opportunity of that present moment, and there is, you know, there are positive qualities in the heart and mind, to not become prideful. As you said, you know, the way to do this is being aware of impermanence, being aware of the fleeting nature of you know, of our experience. And so when that awareness of impermanence is there, then there's also the ability to take the opportunities as they come, moment by moment. And when we really sort of build this ability to be really simply aware and present in the present moment, then it also sustains or it prolongs sort of that stream of favorable ripening.
된다 모지마티에서 다치 담메타와스 리 추냠네테니 치용베가라 고메타와티스 야하 코그와 텐두 타코와티 베야보리스 카르팽기오리스 라비나 지 단데케 메타와 텔레테니 단데 코카비야 보이마디요 하코고야지 와 드가나 이게 주조 메타와 텔레테니 지 단데 존주자며 드가나 이 메타와 텔레테니 Give chola royal panto grace, metawa the yaboris. Lina Taji am metaba the re, that metaba in the Jimambala, Kokasekuchi, Duboji Chagri, Daoji, Samyan Rodan, Semjeso, Tinde, Chico Iomaris, Tindi Tiki, Carsinaco, Simdeno, Chivina, Tiki Chiaji, Semp Julian, Koji Karma imprint, this Chico. Sabata Karsekuretini, young, coaching joy for the Mewachar no boa.
So if we and so then, you know, this understanding of impermanence that you're also giving rise to or cultivating is also really very good, very wonderful. There's really great benefit in this. Because again, you know, based on our understanding of impermanence, this gives us the awareness of the need to take the opportunity when it is present, and to cultivate diligence, to really direct the stream of our activities in a wholesome way, you know, or in the direction of virtue, to be focused on creating benefit, on benefiting others. It's important not to, you know, when you feel some anxiety or worry creeping in, to really be able to kind of drop that sort of that anxiety with, you know, that about what may come in the future. You know, maybe something bad will happen in the future, that kind of concern or worry. Because also what it does is it creates a karmic imprint for worry. So if we have worry or anxiety arising, then, you know, to work with that in, you know, the same way that we work with other afflictions is important, because if we build the tendency for worry and anxiety, then it will just cause us more suffering, because it builds the karmic imprint or tendency, which then can end up really robbing our sense of joy.
Naturally, Masulo chung doya yuva mare, Mahobala Masum Nagari, Shigri, Yinaya, Tindiki, Kaniji, Chigmaris, Tindu Nukasani Tani Contua Nagirita, practitioner to some Bombiana Tondo, Nagiori, Shigiori, Yinayang Koji, Nawata, Shivatiki, Sampujula, no matter what, Levior. Hindi Chignots of Mobala, Tibikina.
And of course, you know, it is, you know, we're not getting any younger. And so in the future, there are bound to be, you know, difficulties or hardships. We may get sick, we will die at some point. But this doesn't necessarily have to cause us to suffer, especially as practitioners. You know, when you know, as a practitioner, if one is sick, or when one gets sick, or when one dies, one can go through the experience of that illness or the transition of death without it necessarily having to to adversely affect or to harm or disturb one's mind. So we don't have to be fearful of what may come in the future, because when whatever comes, we will be able to bring it onto the path.
Tini tiga na yuko siya la kangi ko marapeta na ta recently jarwo mo che tis nyongri ma so tiga mo tunga tu chen la ko ran go ja chu tunga tu chen ma so ro chi nyamle chi tini chi ro wa ti chi tini ta ja tang ko ran ko chi khema ta tis chong yo sa wa ti ngi tini ga hi ya shu chi na sta chura ya shu chi na ya ko yo sa re tini hyu yo sa re ina ta ko ta pe ya ko cha song song do wa na pe che ren be di song ya ko cha song ta ne na tong da chang drop song be ya ko chung ta na be ya shu ya chi ge me kan ya chi me ta be ji wo lu song do wa de ne tin ji ji xian na ro kan ya me do wa ma da xian na yo na ta ji ta pin da me da chi ge wa ko chi na chi tu ya yo ri ko ra chi member ya ando me ka ya ando ta tin ji ko ra se ko wa di ka nge yo ma ri yin na yang ko ji tang da ka shu se na 그래 희한하고 선나고 tindi지 그 맛이야 그 탑도 tin디 용금도
겨울은 뭐지 달래라면
결보
겨울은 뭐지 근데 두가 되지
이게 코랑 가서 이게 좀 같은 세요로 이제 좀 같은 다들 다들 말하는 릭서
So for instance, Gyalpo Rinpoche, who passed away not all that long ago, he when he found out, that he had severe, kidney issues, and that he was, that he would have to have some pretty serious surgery to try to correct it. He said at that time, he had no attitude of fear. He said, I've lived a long life, and I don't need to try to extend my life. I don't need to seek a surgery. And he really had no fear. He had no anxiety about it, but was completely at peace, completely at ease with the situation. If he had been fearful, then he could have done all kinds of things, to prevent his demise. He could have he would have had access to, the best doctors and the best hospitals, and he could have done all sorts of things, to try to correct the problem, but instead, he was completely at peace with what the situation. He said he had no regrets, and he had lived a long life, and so this is an example of somebody, a great practitioner, who, in the midst of ripening of a physical illness and death, is completely free of any anxiety or fear.
So yeah, we are here also, of course, the Dharma. So we cannot control sickness and death, but we suffering from sickness that we slowly able to control. So maybe later on we will say, but this is not really powered by the sickness.
You're not overpowered by the sickness.
And also as well as death. So that's why we no worry.
Thank you so much for your answer. It's really wonderful. Thank you.
So there's a couple questions on Facebook. One is from Ann Donowitz from Arizona, and she asks, is the Bodhisattva's practice the one that the Dalai Lama has recommended in the face of Chinese invasion of Tibet?
Beta Dalai Lama te koti nyam ne chigi gore be le.
No, the Dalai Lama pena the Papardu the Jami Yang Zindu dini the so the Gatse Latlin Yamlin Chigo Sumurebe.
Yes, of course, you know. So yeah, Dalai Lama is so not really. Of course, you know, these difficult situations in the world. But same time, he's not really like consider, you know, headed, you know, Chinese. So even though not like Dalai Lama, so how many people are these sub-emulated, right?
Who did the self-immolations?
Right, they themselves they did, but otherwise they can't harm others, you know. They sacrifice their life, you know, so put the bomb or like put the gasoline or, you know, can't harm to easily, you know,
they
sacrifice
they
the
could
life.
easily harm
really
others
easy, you know, so
if they're willing, yeah, but instead they sacrifice their own
life, but not really try to harm, you know, killed in Chinese.
And then another question from Debbie Langrano, and she asks, can we undo karmic imprints with practice?
Of course. Yes, yeah, both, you know, so the karmic imprint is the both, you know, negative and positive. So like, so we have to build more positive things. So, but every single, you know, they can print karmic imprint, like even though like we say all money payment once, that's able to karmic imprint in mind.
So that what he's saying is that that itself creates positive karmic imprints. So every time we practice Dharma or we practice virtue or the wholesome, we are overriding negative karmic imprints with positive karmic imprints.
Mm-hmm. Right, so that's karma imprint means, you know, so sometimes, or like negative side. So negative side, if maybe someone very easy to angry, but then the beginning is maybe very difficult. First time is very difficult. But then the second time is a little bit better, and third time is a little bit better, and fourth time is a little bit better, and better. Then maybe 10 times, or don't know, 100 times, maybe not angry. So that means karma imprint. So also, yeah.
So that's it for Facebook.
Okay, so we are going to dedication.
Mm-hmm. So we can do the dedication prayers on page 24 of the prayer book. By the virtues collected in the 3 times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Drikungpa Radha Sri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, Master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
good day.